Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to keep up with our latest stories. They thought it was just another quiet night, ordinary, uneventful, the kind of night that faded into memory without ever leaving a mark. But fate had other plans. It all began with a sound in the dark, and ended with something no one in Maple Hollow, Colorado could ever explain. That night, the cold settled in like it always did in early winter. Snow flurries drifted lazily through. The air, illuminated in the glow of streetlights and headlights, dancing like silent ash. The wind whispered through the trees, brushing bare branches against rooftops and windows, and most of the small mountain town had already gone to bed. Porch lights were off, curtains drawn, chimneys puffing thin trails of smoke into the starless sky. Down a winding two-lane road, a silver SUV moved slowly around a curve, its tires crunching the soft powder that had begun to settle. Behind the wheel sat Michael Green, a high school guidance counselor known for his calm demeanor and kind eyes. His hands gripped the steering wheel lightly, his gaze fixed ahead, but his mind was far from the road. Beside him in the passenger seat sat Emily Green, his wife of 8 years. She was staring out her window, her reflection dim and still in the glass. A pottery instructor at the local art center, Emily had always loved working with her hands, shaping, molding, smoothing imperfections. But some things, no matter how much love you pressed into them, refused to take the shape you dreamed of. Neither of them spoke. It wasn't the kind of silence that came from boredom or distraction. It was heavier than that, an unspoken weight that had settled over them long ago. The kind of silence made up of words they had stopped trying to say, of questions they didn't want to hear the answers to, of grief that had softened but never left. They had just left a small dinner gathering at a colleague's house, a warm, polite affair filled with jazz records playing softly in the background, wine glasses clinking gently, and the aroma of roasted vegetables and homemade bread. The kind of evening where laughter came easily, at least for a while, until that one moment, a lull in conversation. A casual sip of wine, a cheerful voice asking, "So, any baby news yet?" It wasn't meant to hurt. The question was asked with a smile, eyes full of curiosity and encouragement. But for Michael and Emily, it was a blade disguised as a compliment. Michael had smiled his practice smile, the one he'd worn for years at family holidays and neighborhood barbecues. "Maybe we'll start with a dog first," he joked, with just enough charm to redirect the conversation. There was laughter, a few light-hearted comments, and soon the subject had moved on, but the damage was already done. The silence that followed them into the car wasn't new, but tonight it felt sharper, deeper. It dug into the spaces between them, into the years of trying, of hoping, of visits to specialists and uncomfortable chairs in pastel-colored clinics. Years of hearing terms like unexplained infertility, low success rate, secondary risks, and eventually, acceptance, a word that sounded too clean for what it truly meant. Michael glanced at Emily. Her face was half lit by the glow of passing streetlights. She hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, her posture too still to be mistaken for peace. Her eyes were open, but they weren't seeing the snow or the road or the houses that blurred by. They were lost somewhere far deeper. As they turned onto their street, the quiet seemed to shift. It wasn't just absence of sound anymore. It felt dense, as though something unseen was pressing down on the night itself. A breath being held by the dark. Waiting, the SUV's headlights sliced through the darkness, casting fleeting shadows across the front lawns and empty sidewalks. Michael slowed as they reached their driveway, easing the vehicle between the hedges they'd planted this summer they moved in. The tires made a soft crackling sound against the frozen gravel. Above them, the streetlight flickered once, then again before holding steady, casting a pale golden hue over their modest home. The windows were dark, the porch empty. Everything looked the same. Still, quiet, undisturbed. but something felt off. Michael shifted into park, but didn't move to turn off the engine right away. Emily finally blinked and looked up at the house, her brow creased faintly. "Did you leave the porch light on?" she asked softly, the first words she'd spoken in over an hour. Michael stared at the darkened porch. "I thought I did." Then they both saw it. The front door closed now wasn't quite aligned, as if it had been opened, and not fully shut. A breath caught in Emily's throat. Michael's hand moved instinctively to the gear shift. "Stay in the car," he said, his voice low, alert. She didn't argue. What they didn't know, what they couldn't have known, was that the night wasn't finished with them yet. Something had begun. Felt different. Emily moved slowly, reaching for her seatbelt, but before she could click it open, she paused, her brows furrowed. "Did you hear that?" She's barely above a whisper. Michael, who was halfway out of the driver's seat, stopped. "Hear what?" She held up a hand, eyes scanning the darkness just beyond the windshield. "Should just listen." And then they both heard it, a faint, trembling whimper. At first it was so soft it could have been mistaken for wind brushing past a cracked window. But there it was again, a low, pitiful sound coming from somewhere near the side of the house. Michael turned back, closing the car door quietly. They stepped cautiously into the cold, following the sound toward the alley that ran behind their house. The air back there was filled with the scent of damp leaves, old trash, and something else something alive. He pulled out his phone and switched on the flashlight. The narrow beam sliced through the darkness, revealing a row of trash bins and a few scattered bags. Then finally the light landed on a shape. Curled up between two bins was a dog, a German Shepherd. The animal looked fragile, its ribs pressing sharply against patchy fur. One of its front legs hung awkwardly, its amber eyes glowed in the light, wide with fear. Beauty didn't growl or bark, it just stared. "Oh, sweetheart," Emily breathed, crouching slowly. "Careful," Michael warned. "He might be aggressive." But shedden back away, her voice softened, full of instinct and compassion. "No, he's just scared." Emily moved slowly, as if every step might startle the fragile creature bear her. The dog didn't move, but its eyes tracked her every motion, wide, wet, waiting for the worst. She kept her voice low and steady, the same tone she said when her pottery students cracked their work and cried in frustration. "It's okay," she murmured. "You're not alone now." Michael stood back, unsure. He didn't distrust the dog, but he didn't trust it either. That kind of fear in an animal could turn fast. "Let me try something," he said, turning and jogging back to the car. A minute later he returned with a piece of sausage wrapped in foil from the dinner party. He crouched and slowly unwrapped it. The dog sniffed the air, earth-twitching hunger overpowered fear. With hesitant steps it crept forward and took food gently from Michael's outstretched hand. They didn't say it aloud, but something passed between the three of them in that moment, an unspoken agreement. This wasn't just about kindness. It felt like the beginning of something they couldn't name yet. Back inside, Emily laid an old fleece blanket near the fireplace. Michael filled a bowl with water and another with leftovers and chicken. The dog, now lying on the blanket, didn't close his eyes. His body remained tight, alert, his ears flicked at every creak in the floorboards. Every passing car outside. Emily sat cross-legged, a few feet away, watching him. "We should give him Annam," she whispered, though mostly to herself. Michael glanced over from the kitchen. "Rusty, let's name him Rusty." Outside the wind howled through the trees, but inside the fire glowed soft and steady. And for the first time in a long time there was a new presence in their home, a broken dog who somehow made the silence feel less lonely. Some team deep into the night. Emily stirred in her sleep. At first it was just a faint noise, barely louder than the ticking of fuel clock. Then it came again. A light scraping sound, nails on hardwood. She sat up slowly, eyes adjusting to the darkness off their bedroom. "Michael," she whispered, nudging his shoulder. "He's pacing." Michael groaned softly, still tangled in half sleep. The dog. Emily did, already slipping her feet into slippers. "Something's wrong." They crept into the hallway. The living room lamp still glowed softly where they'd left it, but the blanket near. The fireplace was empty, the water bowl untouched. Rusty. Emily called gently. Then came a soft creak. The front door stood slightly ajar, letting in a ribbon of cold air. "He's gone," Michael said, his voice sharp with disbelief. "I thought I closeted." Without another word, they both stepped outside barefoot the wooden porch. Cold under their soles, snowflakes drifted lazily from the sky. The street was empty, quiet in a way that felt eerie and natural. Emily's heart sank. Then came the sound, quick light footsteps. Not panicked, determined, from under the shadow of the nearest street lamp. Rusty appeared trotting, but he went alone, and his jaws gently held was a bundle wrapped in what looked like a dirty blue towel. Michael blinked in confusion. Just that Rusty approached. Carefully and laid the bundle down at Emily's feet. She knelt instinctively. The towel twitched. A faint cry rose up, barely audible, but unmistakably human. Emily's breath caught. Her hands trembled as she peeled Fetawell open, a newborn, red-faced, ice-healed. Shut body quivering with each tiny strain, sob. Blood matted his hair. His skin was cold. "Oh my God," she gasped, scooping him into her arms without thinking. "Michael, he's freezing. He's a baby. He's alive." Michael stared, paralyzed. The shock, the surrealness of it all anchored him in place. Rusty stood beside them, unmoving. His eyes never left the child. Emily held the baby close, instinct over it and everything else. The small bundle blistered in her arms, his cries weak and draw. She didn't need medical training talk. No, he was in danger. The chill in his skin, the way his breath stuttered, his fragile body curled like a question mark. Michael snapped out of his daze. "We need to call 911 now." His hands trembled as he fumbled for his phone. Emily didn't take her eyes off the baby, her voice a soft chin. "It's okay, you're safe now. Stay with me, little one." Michael relayed their address to the dispatcher, trying to keep his voice level, but emotion cracked through. "It's a newborn. Someone left him outside. The dog found him." Even saying it out loud didn't make it feel any more real. Within minutes, the still night was shattered by the wally of sirens. Red and blue lights danced across the snow-covered yard as an ambulance pulled up beside the curb. Apple's cruiser followed. Emily sat on the living room couch, cradling the baby as if she could will him warm. A paramedic knelt before her. "You did the right thing," he said gently. "We've got him now." Reluctantly, Emily handed the baby over, her arms suddenly aching with the absence. Michael tried to explain everything to the officer. How the dog just appeared, how he left and came back, how he brought them a baby. The officer glanced at Rusty, now lying near the fireplace, his body tense but calm, eyes tracking every move the paramedics made. "He hasn't taken his eyes off the baby since," Emily said, voice low. The officer knelt beside Rusty. "Some protector you've got." Rusty didn't react to the compliment, just kept watching. No one had any answers yet, only questions that hung in through him like fog. But in the middle of all that uncertainty, one thing was clear. This baby was never meant to be found, and yet somehow, against all odds, against dark, he had been by a dog who's held and have trusted anyone but did. The next few days passed in a haze. The baby, now stable and warm in a neonatal unit at the county hospital, was listed as infant boy Doe. No name, no birth certificate, no known family, but the investigation moved quickly. On the third day, police traced a lead from a nearby clinic. A young woman had come in the week before complaining of abdominal pain. Refusing a full examination, a neighbor had also reported concern, said the woman had been visibly pregnant. But no, wasn't. She hadn't said anything, just kept to herself even more than usual. Her name was Lena Ramirez, 25 years old, night shift packer at a local warehouse. Single mother of 2 small children, no husband, no steady partner, and no one to turn to when detectives questioned her. She didn't deny anything. She didn't try to explain it away. "I didn't know what else I'd do," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I couldn't afford anotherapy. I could barely afford the 2 I already have." She had hidden the pregnancy from everyone, family, co-workers, even the children. She tucked it into bed each night. When labor came early, she gave birth alone in her apartment bathroom. wrapped the baby in a towel, fed him once, then waited until he was asleep, and carried him 2 blocks in the dead of night. I thought maybe Simeon would find him, or maybe they wouldn't, she admitted, eyes dull with exhaustion. I just couldn't be his mother. The officers didn't respond immediately. It was easy to be angry, easy to feel outraged, but the truth was heavier than blame. Lena wasn't a monster. She was just broken. She was arrested on charges of child endangerment and abandonment. While other children were placed with her parents for temporary care, and some were acris. Town in a home still echoing with faint cries of a child. They had known a week ago. Michael and Emily sat in silence, thinking not just of the baby but of the mother who couldn't hold on. Days went by, but Emily couldn't shake the image of the baby from her mind. His tiny cries still echoed in her ears. The way he trembled in her arms that night, barely clinging to warmth, to life. It replayed again and again like a loop that refused to end. She found herself folding laundry slower, standing longer in the doorway of the room they had once painted yellow. The nursery had sat and couched for years. At first it had been filled with soft blankets and picture books, tiny shoes lined up on a shelf hanging in every corner. Then came the test results, the consultations. The grief. One by one they had packed items away, but they never took the room apart completely. They couldn't. Michael noticed that change in her. She was quieter, more careful with things. One evening he found her sitting on the nursery floor holding a knitted baby hat from a box she hadn't opened in years. "You've been thinking about him," he said softly. Emily looked up, eyes rimmed with emotion every second. Michael didn't say anything for a while. He sat beside her, with silence not heavy this time, just full of things that didn't need to be spoken. Then one morning over lukewarm coffee, Emily broke the quiet. "I think Wes'll try," she said, her voice steady. "I want to adopt him." Michael looked at her, blinking. "You mean the baby?" She nodded slowly. "Noah," she whispered. "I know it's fast, but I think he's meant to bears." He hesitated. "What if he has medical issues? What if it's more than we reared?" For Emily met his eyes. "He was left though. Die, and yet somehow fate put him in me arms. I don't need more signs. I just need to say yes." Michael exhaled, a faint smile creeping into the corners of his mouth. "Then let's make the call." 3 weeks later, on a cold Tuesday morning, Michael and Emily stood outside the Maple County Courthouse. Emily clutched at her scarf tighter, but her hand still trembled. Not from the cold, but from a very thing that moment meant. Inside those walls a judge sat with a thin filly in his desk, a file that now held their future. It took less than 10 minutes. The judge asked a few questions about their employment, their home, why they wanted to adopt. Emily answered without hesitation. Michael's voice cracked only once when he said, "Because we've waited a long time to love a child who needs us." Then, with the stamp of a pen and a quiet smile, it became official. He was no longer infant boy, he was Noah Ramirez Green. Emily cried openly as she held Thefnal paperwork, her arms wrapped around the folder like it was something holy. Michael pulled her into a hug, the two of them frozen in place beneath the courthouse steps, as if afraid that moving might somehow undo the moment. That afternoon they brought Noah home. Ha had grown stronger, his cheeks fuller, his screams louder. He blinked up at the world as they carried him through the front door, wrapped in a soft blue blanket. Trusty was already waiting. He didn't bark, didn't rush. He simply walked up to the baby carrier and sat down. Then slowly he pressed his nose to Noah's tiny feet. Michael chuckled. "He's claiming him." Emily smiled through her tears. They belonged to each other. That evening they lit a single candle on the mantel. Next to it, a new photo. The three of them together under a crisp winter ski. Above the fireplace hung a simple wooden plaque, Rusty, guardian of miracles. The house was no longer quiet. It was alive with soft cries, late-night feedings, and the gentle breath of something long hoped for finally finding its way home. Weeks later, on a quiet evening, brushed with the chill of early spring, Michael and Emily sat together on the porch swing. Emily cradled Noah in her arms, his tiny chest rising and falling in sleep, lay curled at their feet, head resting between his paws, eyes closed but still alert, always listening. The stars above were Soft and steady like they'd been watching the whole time, do you ever think? Emily whispered how none of this would have happened if we hadn't gone to that dinner. Michael smiled faintly. Or if I hadn't made that stupid joke about getting a dog. They laughed quietly, the kind of laughter that comes only after you've cried, healed, and found something worth keeping. Rusty shifted slightly as if he understood they didn't have all things worse. They never would. But in that strange, painful, beautiful way life had unfolded, this family had been formed not by blood but by grace. Sometimes a child doesn't come through the front door. Sometimes he arrives in a towel and themeth of a dog under a sky full of stars, and sometimes that's exactly how a miracle finds its way.